Everybody's gotta live a life that they didn't ask for. Why would he put me here just to die? Just to die. Hey, what's your name? Talk these for the guys you hate. We should sit in silence while we think of what to say.
Since about March of this year, Tyler keeps doing this gesture. We don't know what it means. Now the whole point of a gesture is to be discernible, so let's just watch it a few more times. So for my money, of which there's very little, I would narrow this down to one of two things. Either a blindfold or a mask, either of which he's taking off. So I'm going to make an argument for both, and then we're going to zoom out and ask ourselves how this matters. First things first, this is not the first time that Tyler's done a gesture that is meant to express what the struggle in the music is.
When I think about insecurities and my insecurities getting the best of me, the things that I think of are kind of a feeling of suffocation.
That feeling of suffocation that prompts him to kind of pull at this imaginary hand or rub his throat. One, it's been going on a super long time, since like 2012, and two, Tyler still does this. This newer gesture could be like the old one, encapsulating the struggle of this era in a metaphorical way. And on a side note, so a friend of mine told me that she read that Tyler does the gesture every time he makes a reference to God. I would disagree. Not least because I think the line "rents a racehorse" doesn't have to do with God. Plus, I think we can reasonably say that Tyler has a tendency to look up when he's talking about God, or sometimes even point upward. Because remember, gesture is meant to be understood. When Tyler addresses a particular phrase upward, we can kind of guess what that probably means. So I don't think it's about God specifically, or as narrow as that. Anyway, so masks. What's our argument for masks? A mask being torn away. Well, certainly masks come up a lot in the lyrics over the years. Since Trench is us approaching the resolution to this very long story, I could see taking off a mask being symbolic of that. Masks are often presented as a certain layer of falseness, and perhaps to reject Dima and vialism is to become who you really are, and show that by taking off that mask of conformity. Josh takes off his Bandito mask during the drumline at the end of Emotional Roadshow and kind of flings it, so that's a mask thing. Maybe we lead up to the Banditos no longer needing masks. And yes, I'm calling that a Bandito mask because Josh basically does also. Moving on. This is from October 2019. Tyler's mask seems to fade away with the fog. So maybe that's telling us it's a thematically relevant thing for this era. Maybe it just looks real sexy. Like, it looks good, it does. But it could also be another way of representing a removal of a mask on a metaphorical level. And that's what I'm trying to show here. Sometimes when we see similar things happen repeatedly, that's a way of telling us there's narrative weight, meaning to the thing that's being repeated. So what about arguments against this gesture representing a mask being taken off? Well, for one, here's Tyler doing a gesture taking off the kind of mask he actually wears, as you can see right here. Like, this is a really clear taking off a mask gesture. And then, in this one, he's doing it while wearing a mask, which does not come off. So if what you're trying to show is taking off a mask, that's kind of mixed messages. To me, it looks like he's trying to pull something away from his eyes, something is blocking him from seeing. And I think that's where this blindfold metaphor is gonna go. Something that's blocking us from seeing things the right way. The bishops themselves have veils over their faces. If you go back to last era, stressed out visuals, you see Benjamin Franklin, his eyes covered with money, and then flipped upside down, now red, as if to suggest a certain kind of blindness, a sinister materialism. But that is super in the weeds. There are some things that are bigger, closer to the surface, that lead us to the idea of perception, what a metaphorical blindfold might be hiding from us. The symbols right on the cover of the album. Okay, so this is what Bandidos believe, right? The 5 symbols. Steadfast in a rebellion against the teachings of nihilism, we turn their false doctrine upon its head. So we're recognizing these teachings for what they really are, false, and as a result, changing our perspective on them. We reverse its meaning. The compass E. The Bandido Underground recognized the flipped E as an insignia of truth revealed. Revealed as in you can see it now. That flipping of perspective that reveals the truth is what we see in the visuals for Nico and the Niners. Or another way we see the truth of that Dima statue is in the Bandido experience, where it's lit in this really potent red. The jumpsuit medallion. An aerial perspective of the world of Trench. This is another symbol where we're using a word like perspective, perception, the way that we see the truth of something. The FPE badge. Many are punished with the failed perimeter escape badge, but wear it proudly. Again, we're taking something that Dima gives us, and we're flipping our perspective on it. We're changing how we see it. And lastly, the vulture. The vulture sees both worlds. This perspective that we keep flipping, the vulture is able to see both of those. In fact, the Trench logo itself gives the impression of double vision. So we're taking what the world, Dima, gives us, and we're flipping our perspective on it. We're seeing it in a different way, a way that is liberating, which is exactly what the world, Dima, doesn't want. We see that in the way a guy is leaving himself coded messages to remind himself that he's a Bandido in his own journal. We hear it in lines like, "They want to make you forget," and echoed in, "As their penance fades, so dims the memory of something more." All of this is about something you might see and what might happen if you see it, and that is to become liberated. Now, whether you want to leave that in the narrative or apply it to your own life, no, that's up to you. Basically what I'm saying is 2 things. There are 5 symbols on the cover of the freaking album that all talk about, in their own words, perspective. When you hear people talk about, hey, what's the album about, you get a lot of, in between 2 places. I really think we should hear a lot more about this, just like amongst ourselves. And the second thing is,
When I think about insecurities and my insecurities getting the best of me, the things that I think of are kind of a feeling of suffocation.
this gesture that was all about Blurryface trying to choke Tyler, and that represented the struggle against Blurryface, the war against his insecurities and fears. I think now, this gesture is all about Blurryface trying to blind Tyler. Because as we just discussed, there's a whole lot he doesn't want him to see.